Warning: this tale is best experienced in the dark with headphones. Watch the video to the very end. Every detail matters, and the final moments reveal the truth hidden in the first whisper. Chapter 1: The Tithe of Sons. My name is Dorian Vale, and the Valley of Calderon used to whisper it kindly. They called me Lord when the harvest was good, and the mountains were white as bone. Now, even the stones avoid my shadow. The year the Empire came for our boys, the wind turned wrong. Messengers rode under banners the color of dried blood, demanding the tithe. 100 sons to feed the furnaces of an endless war. I remembered those banners from my own childhood, the way they cut the world into edges and orders. I had once been a page, then a blade, until the Empire broke me on its wheel and sent me home with their scars. My wife, Lisa, held my hand as our council argued. My son, Arlen, hid behind her skirts, clutching a wooden stag. The thought of him marching east into a desert of steel made bile rise in my throat. "We cannot fight an empire," said Elder Myron. "We have fields and prayers. They have thunder and fire." "We have mountains," I said, "and the old ways." Faces turned from me, as if I had spoken a contagion. The old ways were the stories you used to frighten cattle back into the fold. The old ways were the cave in Black Hollow, where torches sank and voices came back thinner than they left. "Don't," Lisa whispered later, when we were alone, the moon trapped in the frost on the casement. "Dorian, not that place." I kissed her hair and told the truth poorly. "I will bring our boy home." It was snowing when I rode for Black Hollow. The world was very quiet, as if it, too, held its breath. Chapter 2: The Thing Beneath the Mountain. The mouth of Black Hollow looked chewed, edges bitten by something patient and large. The torches burned low in there, like they feared being seen. I tied my horse to a dead pine, and walked in with a sword heavy at my side, and a prayer heavy in my mouth. The cave breathed. Every step I took stirred some ancient lung. My breath fogged and drifted forward, swallowed by a darkness that felt like silk on my skin and knives in my bones. I found him. Not a man, not any animal that had let itself be named. He was seated on a throne hacked from the cave's heart, a shape more absence than flesh, his eyes bright like the last embers in a winter hearth. The air around him tasted of copper. "You came like a moth," he said. His voice bruised the stone. "Is the flame so bright?" "I came because the Empire is brighter," I said, "and my son is very small." He smiled without humor, teeth barely present, like the memory of teeth. "You wear their brand on your chest. You have touched their hunger and survived. Some of it must still be in you." I did not look down. The brand burned anyway. "Give me strength for 3 dawns, and I will drown their armies in the mountains." He considered me as a hawk considers glass. 3 dawns, he said softly, "and a hunger to teach you. During that time, drink nothing but what I give you. Eat nothing but what your new body requests. If you resist, you will return to the dust where your fathers wait. If you accept, and if you take even a sip of what calls to you by the 3rd sunrise, you will never fear the sun again, for you will fear everything less." "I will pay," I whispered. "Payment is not optional." He opened his wrist with a nail, and the cave filled with the smell of iron and wild roses. The blood that slid from him wasn't blood at all, not at first. It was memory, ocean dark, carrying a ruin of faces. "Drink, Calderon," he said, and the world ended in red. When I came to, my mouth was full of screaming. It took me a moment to understand that the screaming was mine. Chapter 3: 3 Dawns Without Mercy. The first night I saw as the owls see. Every ant in the bark of every pine was a soldier marching. I could hear water negotiating with stone deep under the mountain. The moon crawled like a wounded thing. I ran home in one breath. Lisa woke with my name half-formed, then caught it back as if names were dangerous creatures. "Your eyes," she said. "Dorian, your eyes." I told her what I could and lied about the rest. We barred the shutters. I paced like a chained dog as my skin itched at every heartbeat in the house. Each pulse in walls and children, and the old dog dozing by the fire. Somewhere, a fox bit through a rabbit, and the noise made me retch from want. At midnight the Empire's scouts came, 5 men laughing at their luck, their horses blowing steam. They expected a door creaking open to a man with a quavering voice and a purse of excuses. They did not expect the door to open on a wind that smelled like grave dirt. I was a storm. My hands were blades. The night itself picked them up and tore them apart. When it was done, the yard sprouted red flowers in the snow. I did not breathe until I could no longer hear the heartbeats of the dying. Then I breathed too deeply. "Don't," Lisa said behind me, a word like a thread across a chasm. "Don't, Dorian, please." I forced the hunger back down into my ribs like a dog back into its kennel and staggered. I have 2 more dawns, I said. I can hold. The second night the Empire's general, a boy with a crown of black iron for arrogance, rode into Cauldron with 300 men and a banner that promised amnesia. He sent for me by name. We met in the street where the cobbles had been warm once from the feet of our children. He looked at my face and did not like what he saw there. "Lord Vale," he said, as if the words were stones he disliked the taste of. "I require your heir. I require your life," I said, and the shouting began. I do not know how to tell you what I became. I was wind, and then I was a fog, and then I was a cloud of screaming mouths that were somehow mine. The horses tore themselves apart to avoid me. Steel went through me, and came out clean and disappointed. By dawn, there were no more banners in Cauldron, only men trying to remember what their mothers called them. My hands shook. My teeth hurt. The sun rose like an accusation. 2 dawns done, I said to no one. Arlen held my leg. Lisa did not kiss me when I left the house, not then. She looked as if I had died and was walking anyway. The 3rd night was a liar. It began like any night, with wolves complaining to the moon. It ended with Arlen gone. They took him in the hour before midnight, when the shadows are the size of kingdoms. They left a button from his sleeve and the smell of horses. I went to the square to look for witnesses. I found only quiet men who would not look at me, and one message carved with a knife into our well. "Bring your hunger to the old monastery if you want to see what hunger does." I did not tell Lisa the words. I could not make my mouth say them. Chapter 4. The Monastery of Hollow Bells. The old monastery was an accident of faith left to rot above a quarry, its bells ragged, its saints rubbed down to anonymity by the weather. The Empire had made a camp around it, disciplined as a blade, neat as a wound. I walked into it like fog comes to a meadow. "Lord Vale," called the boy general from the monastery steps. He had blood on his gauntlets that I knew was my son's only because I needed to believe he was still living to be afraid of it. "Do you know what we feed your children in the East? Stories. We tell them about brave men who run out of bravery. We are weaving your story now." His archers aimed. His priests began to chant in a language with teeth. He had prepared for me. It did not matter. I had been prepared for him in a place where languages poured like water through the bones of the earth. The thing under Black Hollow had taught me a word that was not a word, a sound more absence than presence. I spoke it, and the monks' bells began to ring themselves. The air changed its mind about being air. Bats unhooked themselves in an impossible number from the eaves, and the dark, and the spaces between words. They came to me the way blood comes to a wound. I became the hinge they turned on, and the army ceased being an army. I moved through them like winter through a wheat field. I found Arlen in the refectory, bound but breathing, his eyes bright as a riot. He did not scream at my face, although he should have. "Papa," he said. "Close your eyes," I told him. "Keep them closed until the sun." I cut him free. He clutched at me the way he had clutched the wooden stag. Behind us voices gnashed each other. The boy general called my name again, like a spell gone bad. He had Lisa. Their knives had convinced her of nothing except to bleed. She stood with a spine I wanted to borrow. "Dorian," she said calmly, like it was a morning and there was soup. "You must choose." She knew what I had not told her. She knew what the 3rd dawn wanted from me. "Don't let him see you," I whispered to Arlen. "Hold my coat." I turned to the general. He had drawn a circle on the ground in a powder that made my teeth ache. "3rd sunrise," he said. "Drink and be mine forever, or starve and be no one. Either way, your valley belongs to the Empire by noon." He believed himself the storyteller. That is the first mistake all tyrants make. I stepped into his circle and felt it bite like winter. I let the hunger bite back. The world went very small and very red, and then it went very big. "Come out," I told the mountain. "Come out and see what you have made." The night answered with a sound like ice breaking. The bells shook themselves apart. Something old stood on the monastery roof, and for a moment the boy general understood that he had never been in charge of anything in his life. "Payment," said the figure shaped like absence in a voice the mountain knows. "3 dawns, Cauldron." I looked at Lisa and saw in her eyes every harvest, every fever, every letter that never came. She nodded once with a queen's certainty. I drank. It was not blood, not in any way a man knows blood. It was an agreement that signed itself on me in fire. The sun rose somewhere far behind my skull, and then went out for me alone. Hunger became my only priest. When it was done, the boy general prayed to my face. It did not help him. Chapter 5. The Noon Without a Sun. The Empire learned what horror does to a formation. Men with perfect posture found that their bones remembered childhood and tried to run like children. I went through them gently, the way a physician might if a physician were a winter storm. I touched throats and made their songs stop. I kissed foreheads with my knuckles and put out their lights. Lisa fought beside me with a stolen spear until she tired and hurt and would not stop. Arlen clung to my coat as if my shadow were a boat. I wrapped us all in a night that had no direction and no sky. When the general died, he died like a fact. He looked up at the broken bells and tried to think of a word his mother used when he was clean and small. He couldn't find it. I let him go without another cut. We gathered the living from the ruin. Not many. More than I expected. Less than I would carry in me forever. Among them was Elder Myron with blood in his beard and a prayer on his lips. He looked at me and swallowed both. "What are you now, Dorian?" he asked softly. "Enough," I said. It was the nearest truth. We burned what needed burning and spoke the names of the boys we had saved as if that could build a wall around them. For a moment, for a single small moment, Cauldron belonged to itself again. Then the sun came up over the ridge and remembered I was there. It touched my skin like a trial. I staggered. The night I wore retreated like a guilty servant. Lisa reached for me and then stopped, her hands hovering in a prayer position she had never learned. "Go below," she said. "The old ice cellars. We'll make them ready." "I can dig my own grave," I said. I meant it to be light. She did not smile. "You've dug enough. Let us." I lay under the earth while the town found ladders and boards and blankets. I could hear every mouse and every spoon. I could hear the world thinking. I could hear Arlen whisper to himself the names of birds. Above me, the men argued about kings and borders. I could have told them that none of those mattered now. Hunger does not recognize flags. When night came back, I came back with it, thinner than a shadow and just as durable. Children peered at me through finger rails. Mothers dragged them away without apology. I tried to eat bread and tasted ash. I tried to drink water and tasted iron. In the end, I went to the edge of the fields and let the deer speak to me with their necks. I was very gentle. They died surprised and at peace. That is not nothing. Chapter 6, A Kingdom of Whispers. Cauldron healed in the way wounds heal, with new skin that remembers the knife. People worked and sang without looking up. The Empire sent no more boys in red banners that winter, occupied elsewhere by someone else's defiance. We made new prayers with my name missing from them. I learned the edges of my new body. I could ride the breath of a raven and see the world in 1,000 black diamonds. I could trick locks into thinking they had already opened. I could stand in a church and feel the saints look back not with hatred, but with a sadness I could not forgive. The old thing from Black Hollow visited sometimes, never crossing thresholds without being invited, speaking to me through doorways and dreams. He wore the shape of a man more convincingly now, my outline laid over his hunger like a fine cloak. "Do you regret?" he asked me once while Arlen slept near the hearth, wooden stag tucked in his arms. "Regret is for those who had a choice," I said. "You had more choices than you think. You will have fewer. What do you want?" I asked him. "Nothing," he said, which I knew was the worst of answers. "Your story is very pleasing. It hums. I enjoy melodies." I closed the door in his face without touching it, and he laughed like an avalanche very far away. "If you are waiting for a happy ending, you do not understand what kind of story this is. Happiness was a season, not a country. The snow melted. The Empire remembered its maps. New generals learned to pronounce my name without flinching. They came in spring with silver nets and priests who had boiled their holy water until it cracked. They came with stories of what I was and what I did to children. And when a story is repeated enough, it bleeds into the ground and grows a crop. I did not want to feed on my people. I refused. I grew thin and bright and ravenous. Lisa slept with a knife near her hand and trusted me with her throat anyway. That is the meaning of love in a place like this. Keep your cleverness, she told me. Spend your hunger in the right direction. I thought of the boy general's eyes and chose a road lined with taller trees. Chapter 7, The Price Written in Dawn. It ended where it began, in Black Hollow, the mountain breathing against my face and the torches frightened of their own light. The Empire had built towers from the bones of felled pines around the cave, and their soldiers had orders to cut off my shadow and feed it to the fire. I came with the night inside me like a god. I called the bats and the wolves and the wind. I called the river up out of its bed and wept with it while it tore the ladders down. I called the stones to remember being mountains. Among the Empire's priests was a woman with eyes like polished obsidian. She had a rope of scars around her wrist that told me she knew what servitude felt like. She stood her ground in the tide of terror I loosed, and spoke to me in a voice that had learned its gentleness the hard way. "Dorian Vale," she said, "your valley will survive either way. The question is whether your son learns to survive you." There is nothing anyone could have said that cut more precisely. I looked down at my hands and saw what they had done. I looked up at the cave mouth and saw the thing that had taught me how. He stood with his almost teeth in his ember eyes and waited to see which song I would hum next. "Take me," I said to him, after a breath long enough to grow moss on. "Take me in full. End the story in me. Leave them to their small lives." He tilted his head as if the wind had told a joke. "Payment was already taken," he said. "You are mine. But you think I want you near me? No, little lord. I want you outside singing. I want the world to hear you and hum along. Monsters are not made to keep. We make ourselves through them." I stepped into the open anyway, into the first gray note of dawn. It burned like memory. It burned like confession. I held my arms open to the sun the way a penitent holds his sins. Lisa came then, against all reason, against orders, against fear. She threw a cloak over my shoulders that had been soaking in the cellar water all night. It steamed. It caught fire. She did not move. She speaks quiet words when the rest of us would shout. "Live," she said. "Not for you. For him." Arlen stood behind her with his wooden stag. The same wooden stag. He has my eyes and his mother's certainty. I could not teach him to live if I had only taught him to die. The sun rose. The empire broke. The priests scattered like leaves. The old thing laughed until the cave cracked a little more. Cauldron watched from the trees, and some wept and some prayed, and some just held on to each other like pieces of a falling house. I did not turn to ash. I did not turn to stone. I turned to a promise made uglier and truer. Now I walk when the moon is modest, and the foxes speak to me of small tragedies. I keep to roofs and ridgelines, and the places stories hide. The empire calls me a nightmare to frighten its officers into obedience. The children in Cauldron whisper my name, as if it will come on its own legs to guard their beds. Sometimes I do. Once a year, on the night the bells broke, Lisa lights a candle in the window. Arlen keeps watch with a bow that hums when he draws it. I do not knock. I let the night press my hand to the glass. I listen to their heartbeats and call it church. What I did was wrong and right. What I became is monstrous and exact. The price was written in dawn and signed under a mountain. This is my only sermon. A man is what his people need him to be, even when they can't look at him and live with the looking. If you stayed with me until the end, then you have drunk something dark. It will not leave you, not entirely. You will taste iron sometimes in your bread. You will watch the mountain and wonder which breath is yours and which is its. When that happens, remember the boy with the wooden stag and the woman with the calm hands, and the way the sun can be both executioner and healer, depending on whose story it is invited into. I will be near, not for you, for them, and for every small place that dares to be more than a spot on someone else's map. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you won't miss new stories, give a like to the video, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and share it with friends who love dark legends.